Look around us today. The world feels louder than ever. Opinions are clashing. Changes are happening by the minute. And it feels like we're living in permanent pandemonium. And in this noise, we expect leaders to think with clarity, to make the right decisions, to lead with confidence. But the challenge here is not actually what's happening around us. It's not the chaos around us. It's the chaos within us. Let me explain. When we think of leadership, we often focus on what I call the outer game. It's what's visible, the strategy, the vision, the execution, and the decision making. These are all important, they matter. But there's another layer of leadership which is not visible, but very, very powerful, incredibly powerful actually. And that's the invisible stuff. I call this the inner game. It's what happens inside us when we lead. Our thoughts, our emotions, our fears, our assumptions. Because what we think is happening within is not seen outside. And let me give you an example. This is actually the inner voice which runs in our head, which no one else can hear. But that's what actually guides everything we say and do. So, and here's the interesting part. Leadership is actually what we think is not necessarily what comes out. When things are calm, when things are stable, the inner voice actually remains quiet, almost in the background. But once things get chaotic and they get a little uncomfortable, the inner voice wakes up, it comes alive. Think of a time when you were under pressure. Maybe you were facing an uncomfortable situation. You had a difficult conversation with a colleague. Maybe you missed a project timeline. So what is happening inside you? What are thoughts which ran in your head? Did you react immediately, without waiting, instantly? Or do you take time to think? Normally what we do is we react instantly when we face a pressure situation. Because when the outer world becomes uncertain, the inner world starts to get loud. And this is why leadership becomes difficult. Because in a chaotic world, leaders are expected to bring clarity. But when there's no clarity within, we can't control the noise outside. We can't reduce the noise. In fact, we'll probably add to the noise. I've seen this play out many, many times. I'm sure you also do. Where you find leaders who are great, intelligent, capable, experienced, great performers. But things become a little shaky. They suddenly start being reactive. They start stopping the teams from talking. Basically, they interrupt instead of listening. They defend instead of staying curious. And they rush with their opinions instead of waiting and taking time to think. Not because they lack skills, but because they are being driven by their inner game. And then there are different types of leaders. They face a similar situation, the similar chaos, the similar pressure, the similar in uncertainty, but they react very differently. they pause, they listen, and they take time before they react or respond. And somehow they bring a sense of calm under the situation. Now, what's the difference between these two types of leaders? It's not experience, it's not capability, it's not intelligence. It is self-awareness. It's the ability to see what's happening within ourselves while it is happening. And when we start noticing what's happening within us, we create a gap between the stimulus and the response. And in that gap, we have the opportunity to respond. To make a choice before we respond. Now let me connect this to today's theme, Symphony of Pandemonium. Now symphony, it's a beautiful idea. Symphony does not eliminate noise. It actually organizes it. It brings it together. Think about an orchestra. Dozens of instruments, different sounds, different rhythms, different intensity. But when each instrument plays on its own, it is noise. Now bring a conductor, add a bit of attention, awareness, and intention, and suddenly the same noise becomes music. Leadership is very similar to this. There will always be multiple voices. There will always be changes happening constantly. There will always be conflicting perspectives. In other words, there will always be pandemonium. So the real question is not how do we eliminate the noise? How do we eliminate the chaos? It's how do we engage with the chaos? And this is where the inner game comes in. When you're not aware of what's happening within us, we get pulled into the noise. We start reacting. We defend. We add to the chaos. We amplify the chaos. But when we are aware, we begin to observe our thoughts instead of being controlled by them. We begin to notice our emotion instead of being overwhelmed by them. And when we start observing, when we start noticing, we create a space. And that space allows us to make a choice. We can choose. We can choose to pause instead of react. We can choose to listen instead of interrupt. We can choose to respond with intention instead of impulse. And when we do this, what once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What once felt like noise starts to make sense. And what once felt chaotic starts revealing patterns. And that's when the way we lead begins to change. So how do we start building this kind of a inner clarity? It doesn't need complex funda. It doesn't need complex frameworks. It's just simple practices. 3 simple practices, to be honest. The first one is pause. When we encounter a difficult situation, pause. Our normal instinct is to react immediately, without waiting, instantly. But sometimes the best thing to do is not to react right away. Take a moment, take a few breaths, and create a gap, a little space. That's pausing. The next practice is notice. Notice what's happening inside you in that situation. Ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? Ask yourself, what is driving my reaction? Is it my ego? Is it my fear? Is it my insecurity? And next, the third one, of course, is to choose. You paused to create some space. You noticed what's happening inside you, within yourself, what's driving your decision, and then you choose to actually how to respond. Not the automatic response, but an intentional one. So these are simple ideas, but not easy to follow. They're not easy to practice because they ask us to turn inward instead of outward. When everything else around you is pulling you outward, these ideas make you look inward. And this is the real work of leadership today. Not just managing what's happening around us, but also understanding what's happening within us. Because when leaders do this, they don't just make better decisions. They shape the environment around them. They create spaces where people feel heard, where diverse perspectives are welcome, where disagreement leads to dialogue, not conflict. And in a world that feels increasingly divided, that kind of leadership matters more today than ever before. So maybe the idea of a symphony in pandemonium isn't just about the outer world, it's also about the inner world. It's not just dealing with the chaos outside. It is about learning to create a symphony inside. Thank you.